What is up guys, Jacob here, and today we're talking about the Mobula7 once again, and more specifically 10 ways that you can get the most out of this drone. So let's get started. So tip number 1, configure your switches. Now when you do get the Mobula7, the switches are already configured to a lot of important stuff, but it's always nice to configure the switches so you really know where they are and what they do. Also, there are a few things that aren't really configured in the switches that you might want to have that I will go through in more depth in the other tips. So the first thing you do, connect it to your Betaflight software, go into the ports tab with your transmitter connected and just see what switches are connected to what. And then you can go ahead and reconfigure. So when you do have a lot of drones connected to one transmitter, it's really nice that all of your quads have like the same arm switch and the same stabilization switch. Tip number 2, add air mode to one of your switches. So this would definitely help you a lot when flying in rate mode and trying to do some tricks. What it basically does is that it allows the quad to flip at full speed even when your throttle is low. So my tip, add it on a switch so you have it enabled when flying in rate mode, but not when you're flying in the stabilized mode when you're flying inside. Because what tends to happen when you're flying inside with air mode is that your quad completely freaks out when it hits the wall. But it's really nice outside because then you can really do these snappy rolls and flips. So you definitely want to have it there. Tip number 3, turn off the motor stop. So the motor stop feature is on per default when you do get your drone. And what that basically means is that when you've armed your drone, the motors will not start spinning. Now normally the motors would spin even on 0 throttle, and the reason why they do that is so that you can still have stabilized flight even when you have 0 throttle, when you're falling down and doing tricks like that. So if you're gonna fly outside at least, or do any tricks of any sort, you definitely want to disable the motor stop. Now if you're flying inside, and especially in a tight area, it might actually be nice to have the motor stop on, because then you can easily turn off the motors if you crash. So you don't really have to disarm that fast. But for every other purpose, definitely have the motor stop off. So my tip number 4 is turn on the beeper on one of your switches. So in the switches tab, just make sure that you have the beeper on one of the switches. Now this will help you a lot if you actually do crash outside and you can't find the quad. It's super easy, just flick the switch and make it beep. Super simple, but a really good trick. So tip number 5, it is changing your rates. So the standard rates that comes with these Mobula7s are actually quite stiff. So basically the curve is actually quite linear, and what that means is that your sticks corresponds to the speed in which the roll happens. Now what you want to do is add a bit of exponential, and what that does is that the stick deflection in the beginning is very smooth, and then towards the ends speed up so that you can do these quick flips, but you can also fly smooth. So these were the adjustments I did after a few flights, and already with these settings it flies way smoother. Now you could try this out yourself, and then I encourage you to experiment and try different settings and see what suits you. So if you have this drone, you might have noticed that it always goes into the same channel every time you reboot it. Even if you press the button and switch the channel, the next time you power up, it will have the same channel. So I'm gonna show you how you can change that without even plugging your quad into the computer. So you use something called Smart Audio. It's already configured from the get-go. So what you do is, I'm just gonna start recording here in my goggles so you can see. Power up your quad like normal. I'm just gonna plug it in. And then what you do is you add throttle to about half, you yaw left and pitch forward. So as you can see, a menu turned up here, and to change the channel I just go down to features. You can actually change a lot of stuff in here, so I encourage you guys to look around. Then I can go into the VTX transmitter. Here I can do all sorts of stuff like change the transmit power and so on, but most importantly I can go here and change the band, and I can go around here and change the channel. So I'm gonna change the band to B, Buscam B, and the channel to 8. So then I just press set here, it asks me to confirm, and I press yes. And as you can see, it switched channel. Then I just go into my goggles and I'll just search for the new channel. And here it is. And now if I disconnect the power, and then put the power back on, it will actually remember the channel. So now it connected the video automatically. So that's how you do that, and it's just really convenient. So I definitely recommend you to check that out. Check out the other settings in the smart audio. They're actually pretty cool, and you can do a lot of stuff there. So that brings me to tip number 7, and that is activating turtle mode. Now it is already activated per default. It is on one of the switches, I don't know which one, but as my tip number 1 said, you should actually rebind that anyway so you know where it is. But the way turtle mode works is that you can actually flip your quad over in a crash. So if you crash and you land it upside down, what you do is just you disarm the quad first, then you use your switch to activate turtle mode. Once you've done that, you arm the quad again, and then you use your right stick to flip in the direction you want. Once it's flipped, you can disarm, turn off turtle mode, and you can start flying like normal again. It's quite simple, and it's just really convenient. So so that will save you a lot of walking and getting your quad. Tip number 8, and this is about the battery placement on your drone. So most of you guys are probably gonna fly with 2 batteries like this, and the way you mount them is by using this adapter, of course. But one thing that I've noticed is that you should definitely mount your batteries with the cable sticking away from where the other cable comes in. So the cable pointing forward where the camera is. That way, when you touch the batteries and plug in the cable is much more restricted, and the length of the cable is basically the length of the battery. If you put your battery in the other way, like this, you'll notice that the cable can really fly around here and get inside of your motors, which is really bad, of course. And on the subject of batteries, we have tip number 9, and that is buy a whole lot of these batteries, because you will want to have a lot of them. With the kit that gives you extra batteries, you only get 4, and this charges 6, so you should definitely get more than 4. And the thing is with these batteries are that you actually use 2 pretty much always at the time. So if you get 4 batteries, well, then you can basically think of it as having just 2. So I would suggest buying like 10 or 20 extra batteries on top of those 4 that you get with the quad. And the last tip, tip number 10. Now you might have noticed that I have these 2 quads here, these 2 Mobulas, and that one of them has a very different frame. This is actually a 3D printed frame, and that is because the original frame breaks a lot. If you're flying fast in raid mode and you're flying, especially in places where there's a lot of concrete and doing these crazy maneuvers, you're gonna break the frame. The frame isn't that strong. There are actually a version 2 of the frame already out, so you can buy that one. I haven't tried it, so I don't know how good the version 2 is. And then I will also have a video on this frame, which I built myself. This is a 3D printed frame, so if you're interested in that one, definitely check it out. It's actually really nice so far. This is an earlier prototype, but it's working really great, so check that out if you want to. Now there are frames for other quadcopters that I've seen people use, like the trash can frame or other frames like it, but you will always need to do a little modification, so they're not all like compatible. So I would definitely go for the Mobula version 2 frame, or if you want to check out the 3D printed frame I have. So I guess that concludes my list of my 10 tips with the Mobula7. I really hope that these tips will help you. I know they've really taken my Mobula7 to a whole new level. Now the Mobula7 has tons of features, and most of them are unlocked from the beginning, but they don't really do that good of a job of explaining them to you. So I guess a lot of people like myself didn't notice that it had a lot of these features from the beginning. So I guess that's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.